All right, we are now live. All right, welcome. Thank you for joining me. All right.
Hey, nice to be here.
Yes. All right. So, as everyone probably knows, this is Re-Education, and he is what did you describe yourself in your last video? Like a very small, medium YouTuber or something like that?
Yeah, very small, medium-sized YouTuber,
Yeah.
or a moderately large, tiny YouTuber.
Yes. Well, either way, you are an amazing example of an anarchist in reality, and you have a bit of a following, and I am very honored to discuss with you. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to ask you about was because in some of your videos, you talk about how you were raised with the right, sort of like in sort of fascistic sort of circles, and people were not great. So how do people who are left-minded, who live in those circumstances, how do they express themselves? Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're a leftist and you're having to deal with a lot of people that are a completely different ideology than you are, all the way to conservative, you have to kind of learn the lingo. You have to learn how people think. You have to learn how people understand certain things. And for me, that's really easy because I grew up around these people and I understand them. So talking to conservatives for me is sometimes even easier than talking to liberals because I just understand their ideology. I understand where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the arguments that I've crafted throughout the years are specifically tuned to that kind of demographic. But that isn't to say that you should make convincing right-wingers or anything like that your priority. You shouldn't. Mm-hmm. But if you live in a majority right-wing community and you want to be spreading socialism and leftism, then definitely learning how they speak is a major thing. And with right-wingers, what I notice a lot is that it's just being extremely direct and telling people exactly how you think things should be without saying the word socialism.
Yeah, I imagine that's good. I mentioned that with, because obviously anarchism and libertarianism is synonymous. So I find that they can be a little more, what's the word? Receptive to that word, because especially because they identify with libertarians. So I found that to be helpful. Is there any like tips for because how did you get out of that? Like how did you, because you seem like a very happy and well-adjusted guy. Like I know a lot of people that would be, I mean, I know personally if I didn't have more friends, I would be a lot more depressed and feel lonely.
Yeah. It isn't the fact that I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a ton of friends, but I do have a few friends, and the ones that I do have, the closest ones to me, they're more leftist leaning, but they came from the same kind of background that I had, right? One of my very best friends, somebody that I hang out with pretty much every single day, they were falling very close to becoming a fascist, even about a year ago. And it wasn't until we discussed a lot of things and talked through a lot of the reasons behind why they thought those ways, was I able to actually talk them, kind of off the edge and get them more or less along my same line of thinking. But that journey is going to be different for every single person. I'm very analytical. I'm very I guess information driven. I'm driven very much by facts and reason. And when people give me facts and logic that go against things that I've held dear, like any beliefs that I have, I usually try to let those kind of seep into my brain and take hold, because I want to always have the most correct ideology or the most correct viewpoints if I possibly can. But sometimes that's obviously impossible. But if I can, that's what I try to do. So, and that's kind of how it led me from being from right wing to left wing, was that I always had that desire to want to learn.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the most important thing, is wanting to learn, because otherwise, what are you going to do? So I've noticed that you've changed your video format to a more just like talking head, kind of just put the camera out there and record. Is that the plan going forward? Does that work better for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why I chose to do it that way was because, unfortunately, I had to leave the old place that I was living in that had a room for a studio,
Hmm.
and now I'm living in a much smaller area with roommates, and I just don't have the ability to set up a huge desk and all of the little
Hmm.
effects that I had in the background. So at the moment, I'm not going to be
Hmm.
having the same kind of setup, though I am working on something sort of similar. I might use a green
Hmm.
screen, something like that, but we're going to be getting into that in a couple more months. Right now, I'm just getting readjusted, still moving in a little bit and getting
Hmm.
everything figured out. So,
Yeah,
channel wise, it's going to be like this for a little while.
yeah, I'm glad that you're still doing it because you are you like as you said earlier, you're very direct, so it's very good to keep you in
Like,
the sphere. Yeah. Um, but speaking of like talking and stuff, I've actually been wondering what is how do we encourage free speech without encouraging fascism? Do you have any ideas on that?
so that's a really interesting and difficult question, right? Because
Mhm.
a lot of people think so on the internet, we have this major problem where it's either we pick one side or we pick another. There is no nuance. There is no ability to see in between anything, right? So when you're asking the question, how do we have free speech without encouraging fascism? That immediately brings the idea that in some situations, a lot of people believe that free speech in and of itself
Yeah.
encourages fascism. And I
Mhm.
don't think that's necessarily true. I think that if we look at things in a more three-dimensional way, right?
Mhm.
Fascism and free speech are things that happen, um, and free speech can be used as a weapon against fascism, uh,
Mhm.
but it also can be used to, bolster fascists as well. That's a really deep question, and it's something that I have been struggling with for a very long time, trying to figure out
Mhm.
exactly where I stand on the whole free speech versus fascism thing.
Mhm.
The way I look at it is, first of all, it's very complicated. You don't want to eliminate people's freedom of speech, because if you do that,
Mhm.
then you create a situation where what does that look like, right? Where
Mhm.
what does that look like in a realistic society? Do we, when people say things that we don't like, do we lock them up? Do we put them away? Do we
Mhm.
uh, what exactly do we do? And in my imagination, I like to think that in a perfect society, we have reformative justice. So how do
Mhm.
we have reformative justice if we're taking people that are saying things that we don't like and locking them away? But the flip side of that coin is that we don't want people saying things that are disparaging and hurtful towards minority communities,
Mhm.
things that can actually be hurtful and destroy those certain people. It can actually lead to people being killed, just
Mhm.
having those ideas being spread around and becoming mainstream.
Mhm.
So I don't think that there's a real easy, clear-cut solution to that. I think a lot of people have different ideas on how you can handle those sorts of situations.
Mhm.
Um, but that's why I implore so much that we use a diversity of tactics, because I
Mhm.
don't think that there's one specific solution to that problem. I think
Mhm.
that we need free speech, but we also have to work as hard as we can to keep the kind of rhetoric that hurts people and could kill them
Yeah.
as away from us as possible.
Yeah. I think maybe there might be like two possible ways just to start out with. I think the first one is just educating people on what fascism is, because a lot of people have fascistic ideas without knowing what it is, and perhaps even making it less of a dirty word, which sounds weird at first. But if you bring that idea into it, you could be like, oh no, that's fascism, we don't want to do that. That's like, I mean, obviously just fascism isn't really a thing to say, but like, if you could say it like that, if people don't immediately turn off their brains when they hear that, I think that might be useful. Alternatively, we could also classify it as a form of violence, and in which case, I don't think violence is really should be part of discourse. So, if you can, if you can, maybe if it's possible that we could maybe generally make fascism just not popular, I don't know, just by classifying it as violence and saying, well, look, I'm not going to bring you on my show or whatever because that's violence and that's not allowed. But the only problem is because when you close it out, it pushes those communities away, because obviously the people who turn to fascism are people who don't fit into society in certain ways, and instead of, trying our method of working together, they've sort of pulled themselves apart. And honestly, I can feel bad for some of them, because it's a harsh world out there sometimes. But and so they find this community that just takes the blame off of them and puts it on other people, and so it's easier to do that. But I don't. It's something we need to work on, is how to push that sort of out of the discourse without, hiding it necessarily. And I think education and perhaps a reclassification to violence might be a good way of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I hear really good arguments all the time that flip me back and forth on the whole thing with free speech versus is it fascism sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that always resonates in my brain is that if you are giving just ludicrous ideas the light of day, sunlight is the best kind of disinfectant, so then it's able to allow people to see those bad ideas and see them for what they are and hate them on their own merits. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes people will see those bad ideas, and for every 100 people that think that it's horrible, there's that one guy that's going to look at it and be like, oh, that's a great idea. I love the idea of doing whatever thing.
Or I hate this group of people, and therefore, I think, thankfully, if our anarchistic society develops, I think it would just become a mental health and education issue, and we could just educate it out of people by force, not like by forcing them, but by making education available to everybody, and making it part of the curriculum.
Well, something that Angie Speaks has said to me a few times, which really resonates, is that when you have people that are racist or bigoted or have terrible beliefs, but they don't have any power, it really takes away their ability to hurt people, right? They can still make you mad. They can still hurt you in other ways. But if they don't have that systemic pressure from above that's allowing them to actively destroy people's lives and hurt communities, then those ideas in and of themselves can be dealt with on a person-to-person basis. We can talk to people. We can do those sorts of things. But they aren't necessarily directly harmful. But, of course, that's... I'm sure that there's other arguments on that one as well. I've heard some, so.
Make their bark worse than their bite, kind of a situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a good start. I don't really know how to what's the word? Either way, it doesn't matter. Segue, yeah. But it's all good. So I'm going to skip one. What would you, let's go to a happier one. What would you imagine the ideal utopia to be? And what would you do assuming that we succeeded?
So my ideal utopia is to finally give all of the people the ability for them to actually have self-determination and make decisions on their own. That's my ideal utopia. And I don't know what that would look like, because a lot of people are going to have a lot of different ideas, but that's the exciting part about it to me.
Yes, I agree.
Is the creation and the formation of that. That makes my eyes sparkle, because now we finally get a chance to, instead of always paying attention to this one goal, which is making more money or holding on to power, we get to focus on a better goal, which is fixing the problems, fixing the system. And that makes me just so giddy and so excited. And whenever I get to have theoretical conversations with people online about, like, how do we solve this problem? How do we fix that problem? That's when I'm really engaged. That's when I really get interested. If I'm to speculate, like,
what would you want to do?
If
you had access to all these opportunities, and what's something that you would want to do?
What's something I would want to do? Oh my goodness. Like, outside of doing YouTube. I would really love to have the ability to learn how to be a better teacher. So I want to be an educator, but if it doesn't mean doing it online, it means like being able to go back to school, get the education that I need to be an educator, and actually get out there and teach people things in a more formal way. That's something that I've always wanted to do.
Mhm.
And also, travel around in space. That would be fucking
Yeah, right. It would be great. That's why I really want to push Ale, which is
Yeah.
the thing on my channel for anybody watching who hasn't seen it. It's the gay space communism video, because it's like the thing is what you said earlier was exactly what I kind of view as the good thing and like a double-edged sword, which is like the goal is fixing the problem, which isn't exactly concrete, which is why I like that, because it's there, but it doesn't quite, it like gets people, but they don't know what to do. So it's like what I want to do is come up with a specific goal, because I find that narratives are some of the best ways to get people to do things. I mean, good or bad. Unfortunately, the fascists have a really good narrative because it's just a lie. So it's just like, doing that. But when you get people excited with automated interstellar libertarianism, at least from my perspective, it seems like it's great because it's specific and it's something that we all want. And in that society, we could even have things like AI and advertisement, or not advertisement, but specifically AI and tracking, which is a big issue that we have now, is privacy and everything like that. But I feel like when we have, like, when we're no longer worried about profiting, like we those things can be used for good. Because I mean, there's that story about Target that it found out that this girl was pregnant based on her purchases, and her dad didn't even know, and I don't even know if she knew. But the only reason that it did that was because it was tracking her purchases. But imagine if your phone could track everything you do, every website you do, and again, without it going to somebody who's going to judge you or whatever, or is pushing that for profit, but says, hey, maybe you're feeling a little depressed, or maybe because like even advertisements could be good when they go back to the sort of like, you like this stuff, maybe you would like this, sort of like the algorithm and things like that. All the stuff that is the problem with YouTube could be used for good. And I really want that to be part of the discourse and everything like that, because again, it's like all this stuff, like I'm not an anarcho-primitivist, for example. I don't think going backwards is the solution. I mean, we can perhaps go forward too fast, but I think the only problem with going forward too fast is when profit is the motive, because it all comes back to somebody owning it, the means of production, for instance, and then profiting off of it, and therefore exploiting other people's information and things like that. Because I don't have a problem. I personally, I mean, this is a personal thing, I suppose, but I don't have a problem with giving up all my information to a computer, because I already do that anyway. But it's just that in the back of my mind, some guy at Google is like, I can see what this person is searching, or like the CIA is being like, oh, this guy's an anarchist, we need to, kill him, or something like that. So it's like, it seems that that's my sort of ideal utopia, is again, the space, the cylinders, and virtual reality too will be a huge thing. Because again, it's not profitable, and that will, I think, improve your teaching thing too, because then you could forget YouTube videos, you could be there, you could have a virtual classroom and people, and you could have one-on-one conversations, and then I mean, it gets crazy, because like they could download your personality, and then it's weird, but again, it's owned by everybody, not by anyone in particular. So it has some sort of things, but those are problems I think would be more fun to tackle, because the problems we're dealing with now, like climate change and everything like that, are issues that if we don't, we're all going to die. Whereas, like if somebody's putting my face on a sex doll or something like that, that's a problem I can deal with, like whether
Yeah,
I'm
I hear you.
comfortable
Totally.
about that. Yeah. So, speaking of that, how do you have any ideas for mass line online? Because I was thinking of like, mass tweeting and brigades, like things like that. Like, what is a good, because the problem is we're anarchists, so we don't really have a lot of hierarchy, except right now we have hierarchy of popularity, kind of like subscribers and things like that, which is useful, especially when the people in power are using it properly. And so, but like, do you have any specific maybe ideas or anything that you could contribute on that?
Yeah. First, I just want to say, like, the idea of having a hierarchy based on subscribers is such a frustrating idea for
I
me, and
know. Yeah.
I've always hated,
Mm-hmm.
because YouTube, in and of itself, is not a meritocracy, and it rewards people for doing terrible shit. So people that get more subscribers, usually either they got there because they did terrible shit, or they blew up in some sort of way. Sometimes people are there because they deserve it, but a lot of the time they're not, and that makes me very upset, because a lot of the people that are making a lot of the ideas and takes and so forth within leftist circles, if they're doing it because they're popular because they blew up on YouTube, and YouTube is a horrible metric to gain to judge somebody's ability to know how to do tactics or how to do anything. But your real question for me is how we can go about doing online mass line. So for those who don't know, mass line is basically the idea where you get a whole bunch of people together marching for a single idea. It doesn't matter what that idea is. If you're an anarchist, it just means that you have to get people to be motivated to do a specific thing. It's directing action towards a specific goal. And this can be achieved in real life, obviously, like I've said many times in the past, by joining unions, by getting together with family, with friends, with neighbors, by doing all of those sorts of things, and actually doing things that social democrats and liberals and every other political group goes out and does, which is canvassing, going door to door, making sure that people know who you are and know what you're all about. Now, as far as doing that in an online sense, there are ways, right? But it just is more 3D. It's more abstract. It's a little bit more complicated. So whereas in real life, you would go into a certain community and you would find out what the problems of the people are that are in that community, and then work with them to come up with a solution for their problems, usually within a socialist framework. The same kind of thing can be done online, but instead of picking geographic communities, you would have to be picking basically niche communities, say like the video game community or the movie community or whatever, and trying to find out what their specific issues are. If you look at Jim Sterling's channel, absolutely wonderful channel, and pretty much everything he does is a Marxist critique of the video game industry. Really great channel. And I think that he outlines a lot of the major problems that are happening within the video game industry. And if you listen closely, there's a lot of recurring themes: loot boxes, whatever, pay to play, these sorts of things. Those are things that people can talk about and try to come up with a marching order or a line to march for in regards to those things. So if it means like abolishing loot boxes, then make some sort of, I don't know, protest or organize some sort of demonstration against that specific thing. You could even tie that into doing things in real life. You could tie it into doing something like a flash mob. You could tie it into doing all sorts of things. Also, the online sphere has the added ability that you're able to do a lot more information warfare, which is something I was talking about in another video this week. Basically, where you're able to take information and disseminate it or collect it or use it against your opponent in some sort of way to win. And there are hundreds and thousands of different ways you can go about doing that. As for the specifics, I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, but there are many different ways that you could go about doing that. If somebody, let's say, hacked Ubisoft or whatever and changed all of their loot boxes to just give out in-game,
there's an idea.
Something like that, right? Give out free in-game currency. That would be an interesting sort of protest, right? And there are many different ways that you can go about doing that. Like I said, flash mobs could show up at the outside of a building and do a demonstration or a protest. And the added benefit of that, too, is that you can use anonymity and different forms of communication that are not necessarily directly mainstream to really organize things properly and have a coherent idea and message before you head out, which is a really big benefit, I think.
Yeah. I think online is different in real life, though, in that it's more about being loud versus in real life. Well, in real life you want to be loud too, but on a strike you walk out. I'm thinking about the YouTube walkout thing, which was great because it also made me realize I was addicted to YouTube as well, so I needed to take some time off of that. But it didn't. What it did was it silenced everybody. What I think mass line online should be is just shouting. Everybody should like get like a big hashtag trending of like YouTube sucks, like just hashtag YouTube sucks, and like just list this thing and share videos and things like that. Get people aware of that. The walkout works when people aren't creating, but the problem with YouTube being decentralized and everybody creating, it's easy to just switch to somebody else or something like that, or even forget due to the algorithm. But if we can get the algorithm to work for us, you know, like just have a bunch of people comment on things and everything like that. If we could organize, like if we could get a bunch of YouTubers who did the walkout to work together and do the opposite, I think that would be a lot more effective, because it just get everybody to just like, especially, I mean, it feels weird because I kind of came up with ale, so it's like kind of weird. It seems like I'm attached to it and I want to push for it, and perhaps that's true. But I think I'm totally open to someone coming up with a better idea. But I think the idea of something short, sweet, and simple and easily spreadable is the best way to do it, because then it works like a meme. And it just and everybody can see it, and they can make pictures and they can change it and things like that. And like, let's make gay space communism. Let's do it. Let's make it a joke, but be serious, and just put it and ale and be like, look, what would you do in this world? You know, just get people thinking about it and imagining it, and then it sort of becomes real. And I just, you know, I think that's something that we should work on as bread tubers is to work together. That's the key. What's his name? Thought Slime does a really great thing with the eyeball zone, where he supports, you know, smaller YouTubers and everything like that. I think if we could all start doing that more, and I mean, like you do, you're talking to me, which I really appreciate, because I have like one video on it. So it's like, it's really great that that you are giving me this opportunity to and you know, our platforms to work together. So I think that if we could slowly start to form together, you know, across our multiple channels, then we can really do something. Oh, someone commented something. Just letting you know that this is actually one of the things we're working on, mass uploading, overtaking channels for the next phases. Oh, okay. So the walkout could have been everything, really. It was just a method to get people something to get the ball rolling. Because like you said, it was in your video, some people critiqued it as a team building exercise, which is not even a critique to me. We're a team. Let's do team building exercises. Let's get together, you know, like and make it fun. You know, it's that's the whole point, is like we're love, not hate, but not like boring, like, oh, everything's great. But like, no, we're fun. We're doing whatever, you know. I feel like love can take hate and make it okay, because it's like, a simple demonstration is like, hate is like, fuck you. And then love is like, oh, you're the best, blah, 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 blah. But like, or like happiness is like that. And then love is, oh, fuck you, dude. You know, you're my boy, but fuck you. You know, it takes hate and makes it good. So, you know, if we can include everything, which is also why I was interested in the question about fascism too, because it's like, it's the elephant in the room of free speech, because it's like, you can make jokes about it and everything like that, but eventually somebody, like you said, is going to take it seriously and take it too far. You know, we just need education and things, you know, to do that. And so it's a complicated issue. Maybe other people can work on it too, because again, working together, that's what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to make that point too about the YouTube walkout. It was about so many more things than just trying to attack the algorithm or trying to whatever it is. We were completely unable, and we knew this from the very beginning, to affect YouTube specifically. If that was the goal, we would have to have millions and millions and millions of people to do that. That's just simply not a feasible thing at this time. It isn't to say that it's feasible. If somebody like PewDiePie or some ridiculously large channel was able to do something like that, then you would see a lot of traction. But unfortunately, at the size that BreadTube is right now, the most important thing that we need to be focusing on, you said that I critiqued it for being a team building exercise. Yeah, both. I think that it definitely needed to be a team building exercise too. It had a lot of other things going on, But yes, we have to learn how to work as a fucking team.
Yeah.
It's extremely important for us to be able to understand that we have the ability to work together and to come together. Ideological differences be damned. I've seen people that were SJW leftists and dirtbag leftists and everything in between all getting together. Not everybody, of course. A lot of people had good criticisms of it as well and abstained. But then a lot of people got together and actually worked together for once. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a massive, massive gain, because up until this point, all I've seen is people just fighting all of the time. That isn't to say that the YouTube walkout didn't start a few arguments and didn't start a few fights. Of course it did. But everybody from there, at least what I've seen, the rhetoric from there has been, let's talk about what we've learned. Let's go about trying to do something better. And in the future, let's do a walk-in. Let's occupy this fucking YouTube thing and make more videos and get more people invested and get involved. And I love that idea so much more. If we could do it and do it on many platforms all at once, I think that would be even better. So we could take a little bit of that away from YouTube. But no matter what we do at these early stages, it is building that solidarity that we need to be doing right now. And that's what I think we would do it.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do it. One of the guys, Leonardo, I can't pronounce your last name, I'm sorry, but he said that's a big part of what Vosh does. Vosh is another channel. He does almost exclusively live streams, I think, and he does it across multiple platforms, and he can bring it together. Another person is Non-Compete. Are you familiar with him? He's he's a great guy.
I've been on his channel a couple of times.
Oh, nice. I believe, I don't know if he still does it, but he had this great podcast where it was just a LA. Okay. It was like a group of people, then they could come on and discuss kind of like we're doing, but like together, and he would invite everybody basically, and you could just take your turn and come on. And I think we need more of that. So if anybody, sees this and can make that happen, I would be happy to do that. But I'm just too small at the moment. So, it's a miracle that I got your attention, I feel like, because, like
I said before, subscriber count is the most frustrating thing when it comes to doing any kind of, because the problem is that people that have the most subscribers are going to be the loudest, most obnoxious people. They're not necessarily going to be the ones with the best ideas. We need people coming up with good, new, fresh ideas. And we need the people with those loud voices to be talking to them and trying to, spread those ideas as far and as wide as we can.
And that actually brings me to another topic, which is an alternative to YouTube, because it feels like YouTube is kind of it's a monolith, but it's also kind of past its prime. Its cracks are starting to show, and people are, like we had the walkout, for instance, like people are like, the algorithm keeps changing, and the CEO lady, I forget her name, keeps talking about how she's always on the side of LGBT people, but any mention of anything LGBT in the title gets it completely demonetized and unviewed. And now this whole children COPPA thing is happening, and I just think that it's not great. There is a thing called Nebula that is coming. It's a couple of more than a couple, quite a few. It's in like an educational kind of a streaming service that you pay like $2 a month for, and they took a bunch of YouTubers to do it. However, I went on their subreddit, and they're not trying to compete with YouTube, which I think is kind of like, no, because they had so many YouTubers already on there. If we could maybe get a bunch of YouTubers like BreadTube, we could literally make a breadtube.com kind of a thing where it's like that. I don't want it to just be a bunch of us circle jerking about anarchy, which is great, of course, but like, I want it to be YouTube, but like good, like I want it to be, I want it to have leftist voices to start out so that it's there. And then maybe, it might be sucky that it has to be paid, because the advertisements are the main issue, because again, it's the profit motive. You have to get the ads to play. Otherwise they get scared off, even though again, it's actually your computer and phone that decides what ads you get, because they're tracking you. So it doesn't matter what, like, it's not like Coca-Cola puts itself on a video of ISIS. It's someone looking up ISIS who likes Coca-Cola who gets an advertising on it. So it really doesn't make any sense. So if we were to maybe Wait, hold on. Someone said something. You're probably talking about the slowdown. They've been moving, and it's been on hiatus. But we did one on their channel this morning, reflecting the walkout. Okay, so someone's talking about a video. Our boy, Soft Boy Social Club here. PeerTube. Yeah. Oh, he's a friend of yours?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, friends. We're colleagues. We work together.
Okay. So so like a real. Anyway,
Yeah.
Our friend Space here says PeerTube. That's another one too. That's a great because it's like YouTube but us tube.
Yeah.
Which would be the sort of the communist meme of we versus I. Which is it's great.
I love PeerTube. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is PeerTube a real thing? Or you just
PeerTube is a real thing. I have a couple. I think I have one video up there right now, one that I got taken down off of YouTube, and I've been in the middle of moving and doing a bunch of other things, so I haven't had time to upload more. But eventually, I'm going to try to have all of my video log go back onto PeerTube, so it's all backed up on that instead of having it all on YouTube. The thing about having another platform other than YouTube is that it's something that we've talked about in every social circle that I've ever been in about having some sort of alternative to YouTube. I think The Amazing Atheist, way back when I was watching atheism videos, tried to make an alternative to YouTube. I want to say Philip DeFranco maybe even tried to do that at one point, or at least another really large YouTuber tried to do it at one point. And I've seen it tried a lot of different times. The problem is that YouTube is allowed to be a monopoly in this industry. And we have to find alternatives to YouTube regardless. And I actually think Twitch is working to be a bit of an alternative, because I see a lot of people going over to Twitch, and it's a bit of a different thing, but it's overlapping enough that people can get into that. And that's really cool. But to actually have an alternative to YouTube, or to actually subvert the YouTube system, we have to destroy YouTube. YouTube has to be gotten rid of. It has to be broken up at very least, because it's a monopoly. And we need to get rid of the platform entirely as it stands. It needs to be a creator-owned and run platform. And the YouTube system itself, and Google and all of those things, like I was saying, at very least should be looked at as being basic utilities. It should just be something that you have. Nobody necessarily owns it. It could be owned by the people, collectively, hopefully, cooperatively. And that's how it should be ran. But until we do that, we're going to have this massive problem where one of the world's largest corporations has access to all of our media, and it's going to hold on to that like a stranglehold. It's going to hold on to that for infinity, as long as it possibly can. So we have to actually, the YouTube walkout is a good first small step in our little community. But we need massive action taking down this Goliath, this massive website, just like Amazon, just like Walmart, just like every other, like I said, just like every one of these businesses that has turned into a monopoly that we have nowadays.
Yes, I agree. Forgive me. Could you tell me more about PeerTube?
I can tell you a little bit about it, but honestly, I'm not an expert. So from what I understand, it works very similar to YouTube, where you can get advertisements and stuff like that. And I think that they do pay out, but they work off of a different strategy. Honestly, I'm the worst person in the world to explain this to you.
You don't know.
I'm a boomer by like a major margin. So like I get this kind of shit confused. I need my niece or whatever to open my phone for me. So
right. Well, Space said that maybe we could do another walkout, but by moving to other platforms and then continuing there, and then not using YouTube to kind of speed this process up to maybe get YouTube's attention, or again get it to be broken up. Also, your friend, the Social Club, said I was talking about the slowdown on Non-Compete's channel, and they'll be bringing it back soon. It looks like maybe they're moving or something, so they're not able to do it, which would be great. Yes. So if we kind of what we've been talking about is YouTube needs to be broken up like the telecom companies, but I don't see that happening again, because it seems like the monopolies have won with Disney and YouTube. Like, when was the last time a monopoly got broken up? It seems kind of like it's a little disconcerting. But obviously, the more we get it out there, the more we can do. Unfortunately, somehow, I guess because of the walkout, the whole British election thing didn't work out. But I mean, I feel like the reason that Trump won, and again that the right wins, is because they have these sound bites that are just short and stick in your head. And so we need those on the left. And the problem is our ideas are just so much more complicated because they're real. They're not just fantasies. So we can, they take a lot of time to compress. But, when we do that, that's, again, my first draft being ale, we can do that because it's a one syllable word, and it's easily spreadable, and it's it's an idea of what I want the future to be. So if we can get more of those in other ways, we can get more people on our side, because again, we can do that. Okay, Space is on my Discord, so he's going to explain PeerTube to me later, which would be excellent. Yes, Space is a good guy.
I don't know what I would do without you.
Yes, he's well. I didn't know what it was either, so I was just asking maybe if you did it. So, but I mean, this would be the way, because I think the biggest problem in our face is capitalist realism, and just the sort of the default of capitalism, which is what we need to break away. And unfortunately, without a lot of examples, it's hard to do that. But maybe we should bring up them more, because I know that there's a place called Sharon, I think, in Mexico, that is anarcho-communists. Basically, it's a society, and they fought off the cartels. I don't know if they're still doing okay. But it's just, the problem is the world is just so still Western centric. So it's just Euro-American. So it's like, oh, South America, who cares? Blah, blah, blah. Fucking Rojava, like, yeah, they're all the way in the Middle East. It's like, it's like sad, but it's true. It's funny, but it's like, it's the way it is, because again, it's just like, because capitalism tries to imperialize and drag things in, so naturally it's louder and more, effective, whereas, being peaceful is just generally not loud, so it's just harder to keep an eye on it.
But that isn't to say that we are making extreme headway, because I think that we certainly are. Just in the course of the last few years, you've seen a massive surge in socialist groups, in anarchist groups, in socialist gun clubs, in all sorts of different organizations that are post-capitalist or anti-capitalist. We've seen a massive surge going away from there. And even a lot of liberals from back in the day are moving to social democrat. And that's a really good move. It's not the end-all, beat-all solution, but it's actually moving us somewhere, right? And even during the UK election, all of the goods and bads, or all of the bads that people see from that, there are a couple of goods in that right afterwards. And I'm not going to say that these are great things, because holy fuck, I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to lose your national health services. I feel so fucking bad for every one of you. But people immediately afterwards, I seen videos of them getting into the streets and losing their minds. I don't want to be an accelerationist. I'm not one. I don't think that that's a good philosophy at all. But when something like this, something so bad happens, and it motivates people to get in the streets and to take action, I think that that's a good thing. And I think that we're seeing a real break in the clouds, as it were, when it comes to this whole capitalism thing. A lot of people are saying that it's falling. A lot of people are saying that it's being disruptive, and that it's falling apart. Even people that are trying to defend it. I've seen somebody debating Richard Wolff a little bit ago. I can't remember what their name was, but they were trying to defend capitalism. But even trying to defend capitalism, they still couldn't disagree that all of these different compounding problems are destroying it or making it into an unfeasible system. Even the people that are agreeing with it are saying that it's fucking broken. So I think that we actually have the time right now. This is our moment. This is when we actually get to stand up and we get to fight and we get to actually win. And I think that we will. And a lot of people are going to be defeatist. A lot of people are going to think that it's a long road, because it is. But that doesn't mean that it's not something that we shouldn't fight for. And it's not something that we shouldn't try to trudge through that fucking road, because we need to get to that end. We need to see society actually find some sort of strategy to survive at this point again, because without that, what else do we have? the looking at our clock, waiting for the end of history to happen. I don't think that we have that luxury. I think that we should be fighting for all of the people that are going to need us to be fighting. So.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing is we do literally have a ticking clock with climate change, you know. So it's like it's kind of now or never, which is why. Well, actually, I'm spiritual. I went through the atheist phase, but I found actually looking through science and things that it really seems like we're all connected and atoms. We all come from the sun, so we are the universe, and the universe is alive. But we don't need to get into that right now. But I do find that atheism leads to nihilism, and it's sort of, and that's maybe why. Like, not necessarily, but it can, because it seems like that's sort of why the original atheists on YouTube went to the right, because they just, they kind of just like taking things down, and then they didn't have anything like that. But do you think that like mandated atheism would be helpful, or do you think no?
No. I don't think that we should mandate getting rid of some sort. See, when Marx said, I believe it was Marx, or at least a lot of people say it was Marx, saying that religion is the opiate of the masses. When they were talking about that, they weren't saying that it's something that just gets rid of people's ability to think critically for themselves. Obviously, there is a certain aspect to organized religion that I feel can do that. But again, that's a power structure acting upon
and I agree.
But when it comes to having some sort of faith or belief or religion within yourself, or even within a community, that can be a good thing. There is a strong history of leftist religious people making real massive changes. And I think that we need to embrace that sort of history and make sure that we look at it as an important thing to some people. Other people like me, I'm an atheist. I'm an analytical, facts and logic kind of guy. But the thing is, though, is that when I was going through my atheist skeptic
phase,
right? When I was going through that, I'm not going to call it a phase because I'm still an atheist. But when I was watching a lot of those channels and stuff like that, they were preaching skepticism. They were preaching always questioning different sorts of things, philosophy, ideas, that sort of thing. And that, I think, actually bolstered my ability to be able to move from any left-wing or right-wing position to a left-wing one. Because when you apply facts, logic, reason, and the scientific method to pretty much every one of these ideas, you end up falling towards the correct side of history, towards the leftist side of history, because we have the facts and logic and reason on our side. It's not a coincidence that the right wingers are the ones that are denying climate change and doing all that sort of thing, but also falling into this idea that people like the Westboro Baptist Church are actually good guys, right? They are not using those critical thinking skills. I feel that there are a lot of religious and spiritual people that do, and when they do, they're able to look at things and actually see them in a more clear, through a more clear lens. But just because somebody says that they're an atheist, or says that they're a skeptic, or says that they're a Christian, or whatever, doesn't mean that they are inherently a better person, or they're a smarter person, or they are a more knowledgeable person. It's just a belief claim, right? So that's how we look at it.
Yeah, it seems like the problem is dogma, which doesn't just apply to religion; it applies to political philosophy as well, and hierarchy. As always. So I guess one of the last ones, do you think social democracy is a necessary step on the way to full-on libertarian communism, or do you think that we can just skip it?
No, I don't think that social democracy is a necessary step, but I don't think that it is useless. I think that social democracy is something that is very helpful to a lot of people immediately, and if it means that we can somehow fix the system slightly to save the lives of hundreds or thousands of people from, whatever it is, being deported, dying from medical problems, not having proper pills, or not having access to whatever, then I think that is definitely a good thing. I am, more than anything else, I am a revolutionary first and a reformist very far second, but reforms can help people immediately. And more importantly than revolution or reform, we have to think of a diversity of tactics. We have to win in every area that we can. If we focus all of our energy towards the capital R revolution, then a lot of people are going to fall by the wayside. If we focus all of our energy towards reform, then we're never going to have an end goal. We have to find some sort of medium between those. We have to take our win if we can, and we have to use every opportunity that we possibly can, every strategy that we have to get to that point.
I totally agree with what you're saying about the diversity of tactics. Why combination just makes sense, because then we can find people who are good at those specific individual tactics and put them, vote them into their charge until, they have no longer been useful, as, anarchy works. But again, just because hierarchies, we get rid of unnecessary, unjustifiable hierarchies. Some hierarchies are justifiable. For instance, putting someone who knows how to draw in charge of propaganda, or something like that. It would be, it's logical. And like you're saying, facts and logic, which is how basically all of us got here. We aren't dogmatic. We are actually skeptical. And so we ask questions. And then when we find the answers that are satisfying, and not just to our egos, but to our intelligence, then, not to bolster our egos right now, but that's why we're here, All right. The only other topic I have the addiction crisis, but I don't, it's just because of capitalism. They let the opioids out, and because it makes profit. So it's just, the only reason it happened is because of capitalism.
Oh, that's the reason why it happened. It's such a depressing situation. I mean, like the place that I live right now is, well, actually the entire province that I live in, and the province next to it, and the province next to that, actually, pretty much everywhere is dealing with this massive opioid crisis. And it destroys lives, it destroys families, it destroys businesses. It's just it is literally a cancer on our society, and it's something that can so quickly and so easily be solved if we got rid of just a couple of things. If we had free Medicare or medication, that sort of thing would be perfect. That would get rid of it immediately. If we didn't have this drug war, this illegalized substance industry that is being flooded in from wherever, Mexico or who knows, right?
The Middle East too. They grow a lot of poppies. That's where they have to get them, actually, because they can't grow them in the U.S.
Exactly, absolutely. We would get rid of those drug industries and that sort of thing. There's no reason. I'm very strong proponent of this, and I've thought this for many, many years. Even when I was a fucking conservative, I thought this. Drugs should be legal. They need to be legal, because if they're not legal, it just creates a black market, and it's an incredible drain on every aspect of our society. And I have socialized healthcare in Canada, and people being addicted to substances and that sort of thing. It costs me more money. It costs everybody more money. So looking at it from a conservative lens, you should want to have drugs legalized, because it'll cost less money just right there. But there are a million different other reasons why it should be as well. But that's my...
I also feel like a big problem is that people turn to these things because capitalism isn't providing the solution that's promised, and they don't really realize it, so they just want to drop out. That's what happened with me before I learned about anarchism and everything. I had a bit of an issue. Thankfully, I have moved on from that.
It reminds me of what Richard Wolff always says, right? You wonder why people drink or do drugs. You work 8, 10, 15 hours a day, and at the end of the day, you go home or you go to the bar, and you're looking for that happy hour, just because the last 15 hours were unhappy hours. So rid of that unhappiness would work a hell of a lot towards getting rid of the addictions, crises, and problems that we have today as well.
To move on to something else, ContraPoints had that video where she had that sort of call to action to make a new ideal of masculinity. And I think, because toxic masculinity is obviously a problem, but I think in doing some research, I find that it's not just masculine. I think it's the issue of dividing, because our genders are on a spectrum and everything like that, and sexuality is much more fluid than we used to think. I think I think toxic sexuality is the more issue, is the sort of pulling people to the extremes. So I think that maybe to solve that would be to not make it a man thing and make it a human thing and change it from toxic masculinity to toxic sexuality, because again, women can use sexuality in a similar, in a self-serving way, just like men can, and they use power and everything like that. It's all what I think it is unintentionally, by calling attention to it and calling it toxic masculinity, it's dividing us when we could be brought it together by making it non-gendered.
Yeah, like so toxic masculinity, sexuality, or even toxic gender, whatever you want to call it. I think that there is usefulness to a certain extent to use different leftist words to describe certain things. And I think in this case, when you're talking about toxic masculinity, I think that the idea has been misconstrued so much that a lot of people that are opposed to the idea of toxic masculinity think of it as we are opposed to toxic or to masculinity itself, because
yes, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
but that's not how it's being portrayed, and the idea that that's the way that it is just a fundamental flaw in those people's ideas. The way that it actually is there are toxic behaviors that we all have as human beings. And a certain group of people have labeled those certain aspects of human behavior as masculine, and now it is toxic, right? And it always has been. And we should be working towards getting rid of those toxic aspects of our human behavior.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Femininity as well, right? Where it's not necessarily the fact that, so toxic masculinity could basically be described as men dominating whatever it is, women, younger people, everybody, minorities, if you're talking about anyway.
It's just domination, basically.
It's a domination-based idea. Whereas toxic femininity has to do with disparaging against other people that are assigned female at birth. Right? So that's a massive problem as well. But if you notice, both of those ideologies end up working against women, or against people that were born or assigned female at birth, or that identify as women, or female, or whatever you want to identify as.
We'll come up with words eventually.
So that's where the major problems within all of that actually occur. So as far as changing the language, changing the word, I honestly think that, yes, we could definitely change the word. We could use something that works a little bit better or a little bit differently. But I don't think that changing the word will necessarily help, because the same thing is going to happen again, where people are going to take it out of context. They're going to make it mean a completely different thing. My problem isn't with the ideas behind the words. My problems are with the words themselves and how they are interpreted. And I have always had a problem with this, right? Words and language are things that evolve and adapt and change over time. Within certain circles, they mean different things, right? Me saying fag to my friend, though that would never be acceptable, because I'm,
it goes back to the love thing, making hate good.
Yeah, exactly.
Using it as
like we could say that to each other as a term of endearment, right? But if anybody outside of my best friend was to say something like that to me, and even my best friend saying that to me makes me feel uncomfortable, but I'm just saying it as an example. But outside of that, it's going to be a massive problem, right? So the fact that we have this insular language, certain words work in certain situations and they don't work in others. We have to take those into consideration when we're talking about language. And if we're talking to somebody who doesn't use the same language as we do, we have to adapt our language to suit them, or don't associate with them at all, because they won't understand you, right? A Marxist-Leninist, when you say the state, they don't think that you mean the same thing as they mean, right? An ANCAP, when you say capitalism, they don't mean the same thing that you think that they mean, right? You have to use their language when you're talking to them, or else you're never going to get through to them.
Yes, I think, that's a big that's a big thing for me is language, which is actually why I brought it up. Our friend in the comments, LA, mentioned that power is masculinity, which is where the term comes from. And I think that that actually is a great reason for it, because it's like that's why I don't necessarily like it, because women can be dominating too, but then they're referred to as male. And it's like, I just want to, I kind of want to, maybe in a different way, just sort of remove the gender to it, in the same way that people use feminist and egalitarian. I prefer egalitarian because it's not gendered. I think that gendering things in this day and age is just divisive and just unproductive. So that's my reasoning. If it works out as the way it is, then that's as long as the problem is solved, that's all that matters. And so I'm just throwing out ideas there. So all right, I think that is about it, unless there's anything you wanted to bring up or discuss.
No, I was going to get you to talk a little bit more about ale, but you already did through the middle of there. So that was fantastic. As far as anything else is concerned, I'm really happy with the way that this interview went. So thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. And looking forward to perhaps working again in the future. There's your cat. And
you got a different cone. She was losing it having that plastic cone.
Oh no! Well, I'm glad that she's all right now. Actually, no. I do have one more thing. Okay. Is there anything in Canada politically coming up that is reminiscent of the U.S. with like Bernie Sanders and anything?
No, I mean, like there always is politics and stuff like that, but we already had our national election, and the Liberals won. The ruling party won, which I would have said regardless. Yeah. And now it's time to do direct action. So
okay, liberal like neoliberal, like centrist liberal, or like
centrist neoliberal capitalist. Justin Trudeau, he is a terrible, horrible human being. And all of the horrible, disgusting things that he does is hidden under this veneer of being an attractive, intelligent, nice, smooth-speaking guy, just like Obama. So yeah, no, he won. Sad day for all the conservatives, happy day for all the liberals, sad day for all of us in general. Because he's just going to continue to do austerity and different things that fuck over the working people. So.
Thankfully, your socialized health service is not at risk yet, right? We don't know.
You know what? I guarantee it. I guarantee you that if that since it went through in the UK, you're going to see so many different things that are involved in this UK election mirrored within the United States and in Canada and across every other Western country. Because this is something that happens all the time. They always use these little areas, whatever the UK or whatever, as like a Skinner box, as like a test area to find out how they can go about projecting politics throughout the world. And that's what you're going to see. You're going to see it. I guarantee you. Mark my word. Right now, you're going to see it. You've already seen it with smearing Bernie Sanders as being anti-Semitic, even though he's Jewish.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I've heard that joke too. I hope that doesn't happen. That would be well, it probably will. Someone's gonna make it. Yeah. So all right. Well, like I said, thank you very much for talking with me, and have a great day. I hope your cat gets better.
Yeah, I hope she does too. Thank you very much for having me on. And if any of my subscribers or whatever are watching right now, subscribe to this channel. It's so fantastic.
Thank you very much. At least check out Ale, because we need people, because right now, actually, while we're talking about it, it is specifically aimed at leftists right now. I want to make a video that is aimed at centrists and beyond, that can spread out to everywhere, using a mass line technique, because again, I just want the idea out there. It doesn't have to be ale that comes to pass. It could be something completely different. As long as we get the idea of capitalism is not the only option, and if we were to dismantle it, we have plans for beyond. We could make spacefaring civilization within our lifetime. And that would solve climate change. We could do everything. It's possible. Again, the words aren't super important, except for the fact that they're succinct and easily remembered. So yes, if you could, anybody watching this, please check out the Ale video, how to solve gay space communism or something like that. I forget what I called it exactly, but it's got a pretty distinct thumbnail. Anyway, thank you again, Reeducation, for coming on, Aaron, and viva la revolution. Bye.